Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Happy Halloween! The spooky holiday just wouldn't be the same without Freddy Krueger. I spoke to A Nightmare on Elm Street composer Charles Bernstein in 2020 about what it was like working with Wes Craven to give us all nightmares. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Charles Bernstein,
who is the composer behind A Nightmare on Elm Street, which came out in 1984. Actually, the year I was born, so that gives a little context. But if that probably drives you crazy thinking about that. But anyway, there's such an iconic character in Freddy Krueger. But I insist that, I don't think it would have been as, nearly as scary without your nightmarish music. So we're really happy to have you on here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I'm happy to be here.
I like to do these things chronologically a little bit of your journey. So, take me all the way back to the beginning. When you were growing up, I know you were born in Minneapolis in 1943. What music did you grow up listening to? Or, did you watch any horror movies or any movies back then? What were your cultural touchstones as a kid?
Well, I have to say that my mom played the piano in the house a lot. And that was kind of my... the first sounds I heard were really good piano playing by a woman who was very musical. And as fate would have it, and I didn't learn this till well into my career, when she was young, she was actually accompanying silent movies. She was playing the piano in Minneapolis. Actually, she played the Wurlitzer organ, accompanying silent movies. So in a way, she was doing what I do way before, but then talkies came in, and she was just a girl when she was doing this. She was 17, turning 18, and talkies came in, and she didn't have a gig anymore. And I never heard about her having done that until well into the career that I ended up following.
That's so cool that I had no idea your mom was playing for, I don't know, Nosferatu, and she might have been playing some Lon Chaney movies or something.
So neither you nor I knew this. So yeah.
That's so cool. All right, cool. So maybe you have it a little bit in your blood, a little bit.
Could be.
All right, so then I guess we could say you start taking it a little more seriously as a career. You study at Juilliard and University of California. Bridge that gap for me. How did you start going from doing it in college to getting that? I know you did the Oscar-winning doc Czechoslovakia in '68. Yeah. So how did that first break into the biz happen?
Jason, like so many things, I didn't say, "Oh, I think I'll become a film composer." It sort of evolved. I was at UCLA, interested in music, interested in theater. When I was in New York, I was a big fan of musical theater and telling stories where music was a main part of the storytelling. So, that was my tendency. But then I got offered this little documentary film about Czechoslovakia, about which I knew nothing. And it was an all-music film, and it ended up winning an Oscar. And that gave me a lot of credibility here in Hollywood. And, one thing led to another. Oh, here's another documentary. Here's some other things. And over a period of time, I just kind of started doing it. So, now I'm 130 films later, and still just one foot in front of the other. Here's a film. Let's write music,
I love it. So you're in LA, you just scored the documentary. It's won an Oscar, so you're starting to get a little attention out there. When do you remember first seeing or hearing about Wes Craven? I mean, he'd done Last House on the Left in '72, which I believe was that like a takeoff on the Bergman movie too?
Well, you know what? Yeah, I'll be completely honest with you and with your listeners. I had not been much of a horror film person. I didn't know who Wes Craven was. And my agent said, you should meet this guy. He's really smart. He's a good guy. And I didn't know his work. I didn't know Last House. I didn't know any of these things. And frankly, it wasn't something I would go to the movies and plunk down some money to see a horror movie. I found life fairly horrifying. You know, and I did, and the thought of paying money to have more horror didn't seem like something I wanted to do. And also, I was a big fan of movies that were, more feel good. I loved musicals and all of that. So, when I met Wes Craven, I had to say to myself, here's a guy. He's very smart, but what he does for a living is he scares people, and he's asking me to be a big part of that. And I thought, well, okay, let's give this a go. And I realized that maybe my biggest advantage was that I didn't know a lot of horror movies, and I could only go on what scared me. If this music scared me, then okay, maybe that'll scare other people, rather than listening to other horror movies and copying what they did. So maybe it was an advantage in that way.
Right. But hadn't you done some horror before, like The Entity and Cujo?
Yeah, there's a history. Let me think. I think Elm Street came before. There were three of them in a row, around the same time. And with all of them, actually, Cujo wasn't strictly a horror movie. It was a Stephen King book, but it was more of a disturbing tale,
right?
Especially the way the movie was. It's kind of a family tragedy, family drama with a rabid dog,
Right.
The Entity was supernatural, but Elm Street was like a real horror movie. A lot of blood, a lot of, unnatural, scary stuff going on.
Right.
So, Wes was a great guy to work with on a kind of what turned out to be an iconic film with an iconic character, Freddy Krueger. And I felt I had to give him the musical aspect of that character. So it was a challenge, and Wes was terrific at kind of helping me through it.
Yeah, so how does that actually, like, you're admittedly not, at the time, weren't a big horror guy. So you get this project, you read this script, you're probably even seeing, you're seeing the film, because before the rest of us, you got to see Freddy Krueger and the young Johnny, seeing a young Johnny Depp and everyone before the rest of us did. What's like percolating through your mind? You're basically seeing Freddy Krueger with these claws, but there's no music to it yet. So, and you just said a few seconds ago, you're trying to come up with the musical, embodiment of that character. How do you get the idea to do that, like, synthesized percussion kind of a thing? It's pretty crazy.
When I approach a film, I like to think that the score that I'm going to write, that the music I'm going to come up with, will be special for that particular movie. That it won't be generic horror music, but it'll be Nightmare on Elm Street music. It'll be music for this character, Freddy Krueger. And you're right, I saw this movie before anyone, obviously. And the first thing I saw was a black and white work print. That's what they called in those days, before digital, they would run a black and white cheap copy for the composer and the sound people to work from. And I looked at this guy, Freddy Krueger, and I thought, no, this is too weird. This will never make it. This is not going to be, I don't have to worry too much about what music I write for this because no one's going to hear it. That was my initial feeling. It was just too out there. And lo and behold, all these years later, he's kind of a cultural icon, Freddy Krueger. And the film is still, shown a lot. And I saw it not that long ago, and I thought it really held up. Very good movie.
Yeah, talk about the musicology of it a little bit. What instruments did you use in putting that together?
Okay. When I look for instruments, I call them colors, ideas like a painter, what colors, what palette am I going to use? Certain instruments are better than other instruments at doing certain things, like violins are particularly good at some things, trumpets, different, percussion, And so I have to come up with a vocabulary of sounds that scare and haunt and disturb. And synthesizers were fairly new at that time, and they were really good at coming up with scary sounds. The synthesizers were good at creating these sounds. And I guess the palette that I assembled was, I'm playing all the instruments because it was a very low budget situation, and I ended up, being the orchestra. So these new synths, and using my voice and then distorting the voice using electronic elements. Companies like Boss that make these guitar pedals were very helpful because I could run my voice or my synthesizers or my piano or whatever through these guitar pedals, which distort them or introduce delays or other sonic aspects that can make it more scary. So I was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants and coming up with sounds, and that's how the score basically got written.
I love it's so eerie. I think of like that boiler room imagery, you know what I mean? Like the nightmares. It's embedded in my brain, in our fears.
That's good.
Yeah. Who was it, you or was it Wes, or who came up with that little, children's ditty, the 1-2 Freddy's coming for you thing?
That was definitely Wes's doing. It was in the script. It was in the film when I arrived. The girls were doing the jump rope and chanting 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. And that is actually written in the script. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door, etc. However, my task was then to write music under that chant, synthesizers and orchestral sounds under the chant that then integrated with this da da dee da 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 da, the theme.
Can you do that again?
Yeah, and the chords are ba da dee da 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 la da da. The chords were kind of minor and creepy, and the melody, So then I had to integrate that with 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, which was, as I say, already there, and create kind of a language that used the nursery rhyme idea and the melody, and integrated them together.
I love it. I'm just geeking out hearing about all of it. Yeah, I mean, as you said, it pretty much. I think 9 film franchise maybe. It became called. I know New Line Cinema became known as the house that Freddy built. Like it basically launched a whole studio, and you were a huge part of it. Talk about sort of the legacy in terms of not during quarantine obviously, but in a typical year, you could be walking down the street on Halloween and see random strangers, little kids that were nowhere near even bored, maybe even never even seen the movie, wearing that costume. Like, what does that make you feel when you walk in and see a little kid on the sidewalk wearing the costume of Freddy Krueger?
I could never have predicted it. I have Freddy Krueger socks that I saw at, a department store, Macy's or something, and I bought, because there's Freddy Krueger on some socks, and I have a lunch pail that has Freddy Krueger on it, just as little, kind of memorabilia. No, I would never have guessed that little kids would be dressing as him, or that President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, in a speech when he was president, referring to something, I think it was Freddy Krueger economics or something. The first time I heard that back in the day, I thought, oh my God, this guy has found his way into presidential speeches, for God's sake. So yeah, I could never have predicted any of that.
Wow, that's not gonna do it. I just think Dana Carvey doing that. Oh, that's wild. That's wild. That's cool. All right. Well, we got, before you run, we got to settle the Freddy versus Jason debate. I'm a Jason, you're Freddy. Who would win in a real slasher slash-off?
Well, when that movie, Freddy versus Jason, was first being planned, a UPS driver came to my door to deliver a package and saw my name and said, did you do the music for Freddy Krueger? And I said, yeah. And he said, did you know there's a Freddy versus Jason movie being planned? I said, no, I had no idea. So I went in and called my agent and I said, wouldn't it be fun if they hired both me and Harry Manfredini, who did Jason, to both score this movie, and I would contribute the Freddy music and he'd contribute the Jason music. Anyway, never happened, but I thought it would have been a cool idea.
That would have been really cool. The Friday the 13th composer dueling. It would have been
Yeah.
that would have been another versus. That would have been really cool.
Yeah, it would have been fun.
Well, that might not have happened, but I do know every now and then I'll be watching like a Tarantino movie and I'll see some of your work show up in there. I think it was like Kill Bill, maybe Inglourious Bastards.
Definitely, yeah. I'm very flattered that Quentin Tarantino has included so much of my music in his films. He's such a master, and it's a privilege. So
awesome. Well, before we run, what have you been up to lately? What are you working on next? Anything you want to plug?
Well, I'm doing a series of a number of projects, and these are a couple of feature documentaries that I'm really enjoying and that are wonderful movies. But I'm also going to release, I did the sequel to Rosemary's Baby, and Intrada Records, it looks like, is going to release the score after all these years, orchestra and chorus kind of score it's called Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby.
It was a TV movie, right? In like
yeah, exactly. Good call, Jason. Yeah, it was indeed. The sequel to Rosemary's Baby was made for TV for ABC. It had Ruth Gordon from the original cast, and Ray Milland was in it, and Patty Duke. And it was just wild. It came out on Halloween back in the day. So I thought it might be fun to reissue that. So I'm working on that and a couple of dance pieces. And so it's been busy over here in spite of the lockdowns and everything.
Wow. The original one's, I think, one of my all-time favorites, but I've never seen the TV movie. And Ruth Gordon, Ray Milland, man, The Lost Weekend is another one of my favorites. So check it out.
This may not become one of your favorite sequels. I might.
Oh, I don't care. It's just the novelty of seeing it, and that you did the music. That'll be enough.
Well, look for the album.
For sure. Well, that's pretty wild, man. You admittedly a genre you never really liked. Now, there's another one, Rosemary's Baby.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, you mentioned that you used to be a fan of musicals. I'm curious, what were some of your favorites?
I absolutely love the classic musicals, all the Rodgers and Hammerstein, all of the Lerner and Loewe, West Side Story, that golden age of really wonderfully crafted Broadway musicals. I just love all of that stuff.
Yeah, that was, from Singing in the Rain, West Side Story, that era was just unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
Would you ever want to score a Broadway musical if you got the shot?
I originally, when I was in New York at school and so forth, kind of thought I might go that way, but Stephen Sondheim said and did it all. I think that base is covered. I'm just a big fan, but I don't think I'd really want to. And it's such a precarious long shot kind of world, getting a musical actually mounted and produced on Broadway. So I don't think I'd be going there.
Freddy Krueger the musical. Talk about jazz hands with the claws.
Well, I did a little hip hop stuff with Freddy Krueger ideas, but I don't know about Broadway. That would be a stretch.
Wait, what do you mean hip hop ideas? You actually worked on something like that?
Well, a lot of my stuff has been sampled for hip hop. I've got I think 40 samples out there in various hip hop things. I thought it might be cool to just take the Freddy music and do. In fact, it was last Halloween I started working on that, and then a lot of work came in, and I set it aside. But I'm very kind of comfortable with and conversant in the hip hop world. So I thought that might be kind of a cool thing to happen with the right artist,
Well, we got to make that happen. I can't wait to hear that. I'm sure people would love that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool.
That would be really cool. All right, well, let's let that percolate a little more, and let us know when that comes about. That'd be great.
Cool.
All right. Well, hey, you've been generous with your time. I'll let you run here. Thanks so much. This is an honor talking with you.
Jason, it's been a pleasure. Take care. Stay well.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.
Explain your DNA on 10 cases, man.
You're inside the police interrogation room with the alleged Potomac River rapist.
I'm not guilty on any of this stuff.
So calm, so reasonable. Could this be the man who terrorized women for 9 years before murdering a brilliant scientist 2 decades ago? Experience one of the most fascinating true crime podcasts available. Join crime reporter Paul Wagner for Unknown Subject, Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare series. Search American Nightmare Podcast on all podcast platforms.
I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play. Listen local with Podcast DC.